After teaching you everything the melee system has to offer, we also have to talk about the items that affect the melee mechanics. Knowing the ins and outs of these items will help you further gauge the effectiveness of your melee heavy enemies. Or it can help you beat the living shit out of your enemies. Afterwards, we will take a thorough look at the item Counterspell. We found a lot of interesting interactions that we want to talk about, especially after getting a lot of comments like these on our melee guide. The first melee item we will have a look at is Melee Charge. The passive effect of this item will buff your next heavy melee attack, increasing its damage by 25% on a 7-second cooldown. Your heavy melee distance is improved by 50% as well, increasing your reach a little. Additionally, the item grants you plus 10% melee damage and plus 6% bullet resistance, all for the small price of 1600 souls, and it can be upgraded to Crushing Fists. Crushing Fists will keep the passive effect from Melee Charge, but the upgrade adds another passive effect on top. With every melee attack you land on an enemy unit, you will apply a stacking debuff to them. A light melee will apply 1 stack, while a heavy melee applies 2. With every stack you apply, you will instantly reload 15% of your max ammo, meaning a heavy melee will reload 30% of your max ammo. For every stack an enemy has, the bullet resistance is reduced by 4%. This debuff is active for 8 seconds and will be refreshed with every new stack you apply. Once the target reaches the maximum stack limit of 6, they will get stunned for 0.5 seconds. Because the debuff will still be active after the stun, you can keep up to 24% bullet resistance reduction on your enemy, but this will prevent you from stunning them again. To enable another stun on the same target, the debuff would need to expire and you would have to build up 6 stacks again. The bonus stats from Melee Charge are improved to the following values when upgrading to Crushing Fists. All for a price for 4,800 souls when upgrading, or for 6,400 souls when fully bought. Next up are the green melee items that will grant you sustain, and the first one is Melee Lifesteal. With this item, your next melee attack will heal you for 100 HP. When hitting troopers or jungle creeps, the heal is reduced to 30%. When used with a heavy melee, the cooldown is 8 seconds, and if a light melee was used, the cooldown is increased to 12 seconds. This item will also improve your melee damage by plus 12%, costs 800 souls, and it can be upgraded to Lifestrike. With this upgrade, you will also heal for 30% of your melee damage on top of the flat 100 HP heal. And when you gain boons, the flat portion of the heal is increased by 1.5 HP, and the percentage is increased by 0.5% as well with every hero level increase. When hitting non-heroes, the heal is reduced to 40%. In addition, when your melee attack hits an enemy hero, their movement speed is reduced by 60% for 2.5 seconds. When used with a heavy melee, the cooldown is 4 seconds, and if a light melee was used, the cooldown is increased to 6 seconds. The bonus stats from Melee Lifesteal are improved to the following values when upgrading to Lifestrike, all for a price of 2,400 souls when upgrading, or for 3,200 souls when fully bought. And now, on to the purple melee items, starting with Spirit Strike. Equipping this item and hitting an enemy hero with a melee attack will reduce their spirit resistance by 6% for 6 seconds, and your melee hit deals an additional 40 spirit damage. This bonus damage scales to spirit power, increasing by 0.37 with every point of spirit. When used with a heavy melee, the cooldown is 8 seconds, and if a light melee was used, the cooldown is increased to 16 seconds. Spirit Strike provides no additional stat bonuses, costs 800 souls, and can be upgraded to Spirit Snatch. If you hit an enemy hero after upgrading, the attack will steal 12% of the target's spirit resistance, as well as 15 spirit power from them for 10 seconds, and the melee hit will deal an additional 50 spirit damage. The damage to spirit scaling is also improved, now scaling by 0.7 for every point of spirit. The cooldown for this item is 6 seconds, whether the hit was a light or heavy melee attack. But when performing a light melee, the effects are reduced by 70%. Spirit Snatch also provides plus 7% melee damage and plus 75 bonus health, and costs 2,400 when upgrading or 3,200 souls when fully bought. And to really include all the items that influence the melee system, we decided to talk about these two as well. The first one being Shadow Weave, a 6,400 gun item. With its active ability, you can go invisible for 18 seconds. Should you use a melee attack while you're still stealthed, your melee will deal an extra plus 25% ambush damage. And the second one is Collossus. With its active ability, you will grow in size, gain resistances, and apply a movement speed slow in a 14 meter AoE for 7 seconds, and additionally you will gain plus 30% melee damage for the whole duration. The following items provide a special resistance against melee attacks: Torment Pulse, Rebuttal, Close Quarters, Juggernaut, and Point Blank. Another item that is a great defensive tool against melee attacks is Rebuttal, but not just for the previously mentioned melee resistance, but rather for its strong passive. On a successful parry, you will heal for the melee damage and even return the melee damage back to the attacker. Additionally, you will gain a 30% bonus damage buff for 6 seconds. This alone would be quite powerful, but when factoring in the bonus damage a parry target already receives, getting parried can be deadly for your enemies. Besides the melee resistance, Rebuttal also grants 75 bonus HP, and it also reduces your parry cooldown by 2 seconds. This can be used to surprise your opponents, as we mentioned in our in-depth melee mechanics guide. While we are on the topic of parries, we have to mention another defensive item called Counterspell. With this item, your next parry protects you from the damage and effect of enemy abilities and items for the full duration of the 0.75 second parry window. On a successful spell parry, you heal for 150 HP and you gain a 1.8 meter per second move speed bonus, as well as plus 20 spirit power for 6 seconds. Once you used your counterspell, it will go on a 20-second cooldown. On top of the passive, counterspell grants you 75 bonus HP and plus 8 spirit power, and the item can be bought for 3,200 souls. When testing counterspell, we found some interesting interactions. Let's start with the ones regarding heroes. When you spell parry Abram's shoulder charge, he will phase through you, but when Abrams collides with a wall, you can still get stunned sometimes. When parrying Celeste's ult, you will only block the first damage instance, but the projectile will still bounce to nearby targets. When you try to block Dormant's ult, you can hear the spell parry go off, but you will still get sent to the hotel. So make sure to wait and parry the exit damage if you don't manage to get out in time. If the Doorman has unlocked a tier 3 upgrade on his ultimate, this will still give him the reduced cooldown because you only block the damage, but it counts as failing to check out. However, if you parry in the perfect moment, just before the first E turns fully white, the parry window will last long enough to also block the stun when returning from the Baroness. If you spell parry Paradox's swap, only Paradox will be displaced, pulling her towards you. Sinclair's ultimate cannot be blocked as well. He can just steal your ultimate through the counterspell. When using Counterspell to parry Puddle Punch from Viscous, the damage will be parried. But you will not get the spell parry buffs, as Puddle Punch counts as a normal melee attack. You can still use this mechanic to your advantage though, when you have Rebuttal. Should you parry a Puddle Punch, the whole damage of it will be returned to Viscous. When a bullet is improved with spirit damage from any spells or items, the Spirit Torsion can be counterspelled, but the bullet damage will still go through. This includes, for example, Vindictus Flight, Mirage's Jin's Mark, and items like Mercurial Magnum and Tesla bullets. The same logic applies to abilities that add bonus weapon damage to bullets. Silver's Slamfire bullets as well as Holiday's Crack Shots can be counterspelled as well. And another interesting example is Pocket. When they have stacks from their barrage, their bullet damage is increased. This enables you to spell parry their shots, as long as they have stacks active. And in general, all items that apply debuffs through bullets can be counterspelled too, like for example Spirit Rend, Inhibitor and Crippling Headshot. On the other hand, gun items that only add bonus damage to your bullets cannot be spell parried. For example like Opening Rounds, Headhunter and Lucky Shot. Passives from heroes or items that apply their effect through build-ups can also be counterspelled. But this deserves a closer look. When the first bullet that carries a build-up hits you, the enemy will apply a debuff on you. This application can be counterspelled. If a build-up was already applied to you, you will not be able to parry any more bullets from the same enemy. This is because the bullets will no longer apply a debuff on you, they just increase the value of the debuff you're already inflicted with. Parrying at the moment the build-up reaches its maximum is the best way to use your counterspell. This lets you deny the full effect because switching from the build-up to the actual effect is another application of a debuff. This works for example with abilities like Infernus's Afterburn and Mina's Love Bites, but can also block item build-ups like Silencer or Toxic Bullets. And you can apply this logic to all other build-up effects that exist in the game as well. After noticing that a few abilities interact strangely with Counterspell, we had to further inspect why this happens. After some thorough testing, we noticed that this was mainly due to poorly timed Counterspell uses. Because your spell parry is only active for 0.75 seconds, You need to make sure to parry spells at the right moment. If you mistime your parry, the counterspell duration might be over while you're still in the AoE of an ability. If this happens, the ability will apply its effect again after the effect of counterspell is over. This was especially noticeable with Mirage's Dust Devil. When timed correctly, the whole tornado can be parried, but if you parry too early, the end of the tornado hitbox will hit you again, lifting you up. If your parry comes out too late, you will get lifted by Dust Devil, but you can still parry the immobilize portion of the spell. And as you saw earlier, you can get stunned by Abrams' shoulder charge even though you were not pulled along with him. This also happens when the spell parry was used too early. Using counterspell too early lets you block the charge part of the ability. But it seems like Abrams still pulls your collision hitbox along, and when he hits the wall when the counterspell is already over, the stun will still affect you. Counterspell can also interact with some of the buildings. The Walker Stomp damage can be counterspelled, but it will still stun you and knock you back. But because the buffs from the spell parry activate, you will receive counterspells heal. The new base Guardian's attack cannot be counterspelled. You will just have to accept that you're now a little ping pong ball. The Shrine's explosion damage can be counterspelled, but you will still get knocked back and cursed for the usual duration. The Patron's explosion can be counterspelled as well, but this time the spell parry blocks everything: the damage, the curse, and the mini-stun. When the Patron is weakened, it will emit pulses, just like an enemy with Torment Pulse. These saps can also be counterspelled. Saps from Rooftop Sappers, on the other hand, cannot be counterspelled. We also tested how Rebuttal and Counterspell interact, but it seems like they don't. Parrying a spell will not trigger Rebuttal's passive effect. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe for our upcoming guide videos. Or Viper will get to touch Lash's ass. So that's it about the melee items and Counterspell. We hope you learned something new, especially with those edge cases regarding spell parries. We know we did. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you all in the next one.